The Faceless Old Woman Who Secretly Lives in Your Home by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner, a Welcome to Night Vale novel. Inside cover. In the town of Night Vale, there's a faceless old woman who secretly lives in everyone's home. But no one knows how she got there or where she came from. Until now. Told in a series of eerie flashbacks, the story of the faceless old woman who goes back centuries to reveal an initially blissful, then tragic, childhood on a Mediterranean estate in the early 19th century. Her rise in the criminal underworld of Europe, a nautical adventure with a mysterious organization of smugglers, her plot for revenge on the ones who betrayed her, and ultimately her death and its aftermath as her spirit travels the world for decades until settling in modern-day Night Vale. Interspersed throughout is the present-day story in Night Vale, as the faceless old woman guides, haunts, and sabotages a man named Craig. By the end, her dealings with Craig and her swashbuckling history in 19th century Europe will come together in the most unexpected and horrifying way. All right. First chapter, Craig, 2011. I set your phone on fire. All of them. Er, she said shoes. I set your shoes on fire. All of them. They're in the trash can by the rental office. They're still smoldering. The side of the plastic bin has melted away, and Stuart in apartment 413 has already made 4 calls to the super. He didn't answer because I locked him in his bathroom because I didn't want the fire put out just yet. It's nice, the smell of burning. I used to like it, as it reminded me of a particularly bad moment in my early life, but that was so many years ago, and now I enjoy the smell of burning. Burning anything. Rubber, cloth, skin in small amounts, hair, definitely hair, even wood. A fireplace on a cool winter night, a campfire on a warm summer night, a house as a family of 4 flees, leaving behind everything they've ever owned to be consumed by flames. Plus, there's a true beauty in black ash quivering around bright orange edges. It's art, Craig. I know you appreciate art. Also, the birds are alarmed, and I find that funny. You missed your date tonight because you couldn't find your shoes, which is why I'm telling you now that they're on fire and in a quickly melting plastic bin. Then, when you tried to rush to a shoe store, your car wouldn't start because someone broke in and jammed glass shards into the ignition, or at least that's what the locksmith said when she came to investigate the problem. Who would do something like that? You wanted her professional opinion. She only shrugged and said she'd have to replace the ignition switch, which would take a couple days and cost $400. I suppose I could have used the glass shards to slash your tires to keep you from your date. It would have been cheaper for you, but it wouldn't have been as beautiful. I don't think you noticed the perfect arc of blood splatter across the floor mat when you cut your hand in the ignition. You screamed in pain, ignoring the beauty of your own nature. So, please, take a moment to look out the window by the shower and appreciate the artwork I have created. I call it Craig's Impertinence Multimedia. Plastic, gasoline, and shoes. But you're too busy moping. You've been standing in that shower for 10 minutes. I know because I'm here with you, a faceless old woman, inches from your neck. You would feel my breath if I still breathed. I think it would be upsetting for you if you turned around. Better to let the water run over you. Better not to see. You haven't even touched the soap. You look pathetic. Why? Because you missed a date with a woman who was pretty and shared similar loves and seemed genuinely interested in you? Or because when you went to try to reschedule with her, she accused you of texting her an inappropriate photo, when in fact you did no such thing? You can't hear me. These are rhetorical questions anyway. I don't need a response. You wouldn't even know to respond to me. After all, you don't know I'm here. Even if there's that one day a year ago when you passed by the living room and half noticed the strange new chandelier hanging from the ceiling, the one made from the twisted limbs and a neck of an old woman contorted into the shape of a spider. And then you thought, wait, what did I just see? And you backed up to find that the hanging old woman was gone. Almost certain she was never there. Probably you imagined her. I can see why you're upset. The woman you did not go on a date with is too. No one wants to have a first date cancel on them and then have the same day inexplicably text them a photo of a raccoon having its intestines gnawed out by a coyote. I mean, I would want that, but I've never really been into dating, although it is true that I once was deeply in love. So I can only assume most women most women would not like that kind of behavior. I forgot to mention she received a text from you while you were trying to get your car fixed that included a photo of a coyote devouring a raccoon. The coyote's fur was glistening and red about the mouth, its eyes golden like a cornfield. The raccoon's neck is clearly broken and its organs are pink and gray. I'm sure she is disgusted, but honestly, she's made of similar materials. So are you, Craig. I'm not sorry I sent her that photo using your phone, and you shouldn't be either. It was a good photo, a discomforting reminder of Snowden's secret that a man is matter. Did you ever read Catch 22? It's a funny and sad book about moral hypocrisy and self interest. My favorite part is how cold Snowden got when his small intestine unraveled from beneath his flak jacket. That's not a spoiler because that book's been out for decades and you should have read it by now. Plus, you can't even hear me. You would have enjoyed your date with Giselle, I'm sure, but that's not the point. The point is that the point is that Giselle wasn't right for you. I know this because I've spent the past 3 nights in her home while she slept. I've skittered along the hallway stair behind her as she climbed. I've burrowed into her trash to nap among the rotting things. She keeps her possessions quite organized. I like this about her. It made it easier for me to go into specifics because, oh, wait a minute. I skipped a spot. She keeps her possessions quite organized. I like this about her. It made it easier for me to go into specifics. No, go through her photo albums. There we go. And medical records and diaries. I won't go into specifics because that would be invasive. I'm not like that. Giselle keeps a great deal of physical photos. She likes to look through them when she's feeling nostalgic or overwhelmed. I took a crafting knife and carved away the faces from the photos. I only did this to people who were not her parents or grandparents. I think family is important. Children are the most important. Have you thought about children, Craig? Giselle does not seem interested in having children. She wants to go to law school and open her own firm. She wants to travel a lot too, and you don't want that. Believe me, I've traveled enough for both of us. The world is awful. There is only flesh and illness out there. You'll be fine right here in Night Vale. Don't worry, Giselle will find another person to date. They will travel and be selfish and not raise a family. They will never know the joy of raising a handsome, gentle, smart boy like you. And they won't care. That's good for them. I'm only saying you don't want that. I know you, Craig. I know what is good for you. This would not have been good. Anyway, the bridge is burned now, I suppose, along with your shoes. You'll never hear from her again. Oh, nope, I was wrong. She just texted back. You're missing this while you're brooding in the shower, Craig. WTF is wrong with you? She writes. You two are done. Before you ever even got started. Another text. Please don't contact me again. Please. Okay. What I read initially as anger is probably fear. You scared her, Craig. We scared her. I'm going over to her place now to block your number on her phone so she doesn't have to deal with the emotional devastation of getting some mumbly apology text from you. Done. She looks in bad shape. All her lights are out. She's sitting on the edge of her couch, staring at nothing. Then, for a moment, she saw a flicker of me beside her, a crooked figure with no face, and she screamed. She's so dramatic about everything. You are better off. Maybe this is a bad time to bring this up, but you need to pay your credit card bill. It's maxed out and you've missed the past two due dates. And the thing is, and this is going to sound selfish because it is, but your Netflix account got suspended and I was only halfway through season 3 of Cheers. The laugh track is a bit off-putting, but it's a good show. I really love the plot twist that Norm's nagging wife Vera turns out to have been dead for 10 years and Norm has kept her memory alive by continuing a fictional narrative about her. Sam and Diane knew that Vera wasn't really alive and that Norm was delusional, but in episode 7, when they go to check in on Norm, they find him cuddle up next to her decayed corpse reading her Lord Byron's The First Kiss of Love, and he's crying. The stench is unbearable, but less unbearable than the brutal truth of the moment. My point is, I didn't get to finish watching Cheers because you're behind on your credit card payments. I need you to deal with that. Also, you're wasting water standing in the shower for so long. Stop brooding. Or I will run one of my jagged yellow fingernails along the back of your neck. Your father used to brood all the time, drove your mother crazy. He had a lot of stress and would come home crying. He would sit in his car, parked along the curb a block away, just breathing and sobbing and breathing some more until his eyes and cheeks were clear of their red lines. Your mother thought he had depression. He did not. It's dangerous to do that to people, diagnose them with a mental condition if you're not a doctor. I secretly live in everyone's home and I have seen people coping and not coping with depression. Your father, Donald, did not have depression. He had a difficult time coming to terms with his cancer, and eventually his body gave out. Lots of men in your family died young, but your father comparatively lived a long life. He got to see his 45th birthday. He got to raise a son, you. And when you were little, he called you Big Man. And when you grew up, and you certainly grew up, 6'3" and a quarter foot taller than your old dad, by the age of 15, he called you Little Guy. He loved you and cared for you like the father he never had. Your paternal grandfather, Jacob, died when your dad was only 7 years old, but Jacob had been in a coma for 4 years before that after a hunting accident that ripped away nearly half his skull. He was carrying his shotgun carelessly. He tripped and the gun went off, as did a good portion of his head. The spray of blood really was beautiful, but I suspect you wouldn't have appreciated it then either. People so rarely take the time to appreciate what is around them. Donald wanted you to have a loving father, someone to teach you to ride a bike, to read, to be respectful to others, to be creative. You were terrible at guitar. To be fair, so was your father. But the important thing was that it was something you could be terrible at together. And you've always loved music, even if you can't play a single instrument. Donald was a good and giving father. He loved you. Having a father who loves you is so important. I know this well. You're watching your diet, and this is good. I want you to be healthy, and you are. I took some of your blood the other night while you were sleeping. Sorry, I couldn't find a syringe and ended up using a knife from Rome that I've carried with me for a very long time. I took your blood to the Night Vale General Hospital and serendipitously replaced it with Harrison Kipp's sample. Your blood work came back perfect. Apparently, this is good news for Harrison too. He and his doctor were so amazed that his extraordinarily high hemoglobin count came back to normal for once. Your father's early death haunts you, I'm sure. That's normal. And I'm glad you are health conscious because of it. Your father's body was filled with so many artificial chemicals and carcinogens over the years, his cancers, and they were many, were the product of personal choices, not genetics. I'm old, older than you can imagine, probably older than I can imagine, and I have met nearly everyone in your family tree going back well over a century. There's very little cancer there, rest assured. Of course, you can't hear or see me, and I'm fine with that because I'd prefer you stay on your healthy path. But really, please work on your finances, pay that credit card bill. I want you to take care of yourself because I think you're a nice man, Craig. I've known you your whole life, and you have a beautiful heart. You care so much for your friends, your family, and even the people less fortunate than you. You had only $300 in your account last Christmas, and yet you still donated 200 to Doctors Without Borders. It's hard not to like you, Craig. I want to help you live a good life, raise a good family, and teach your future son to love and respect his children. It's what your father would have wanted, what all fathers should want. But please, the water in the shower is starting to run cold, and anyway, the fire truck's just arrived about the pile of burning shoes. Hurry and dry off so you can see the art I made for you. Craig, I'm not going anywhere. You are part of my story, a story that started more than 200 years ago on an estate by the sea. It's a long story, but don't worry. You have so much time still left. Next chapter, An Estate by the Sea, 1792 to 1805. I was born on the Mediterranean, on the water itself, in a small boat that my father was frantically rowing in order to take my mother to medical care she would never live to need. Oop. What chance did I have when my first act was to take another's life? My father let the oars fall once I had arrived and my mother had left. He cradled me with one hand and his wife with the other, and then he made his way back to shore. I was the first and last child. From then on, we would only have each other. Maybe lesser men would have responded to the trauma of losing a wife by resenting my existence or by forever associating me with sorrow, but my father was not a lesser man. He buried my mother on the edge of our estate, on a hill overlooking the water she had died upon. When I was very young, he would take me to visit the grave regularly, but as I grew older, he realized I had no memory of a mother, and he himself needed no reminder, and so gradually we visited less and less, and then eventually not at all. Still, once a year, he would go out by himself to the grave and carefully tend to it, clearing off weeds, making sure the path to it was passable, that the view from her plot to the water was unhindered. He never married again, nor showed any interest in women. This wasn't an act of misguided nobility. He was so fully occupied by raising a daughter and by my mysterious work that there simply never was space for a second act to his romantic life. Maybe if this story had turned out differently, he would have eventually, as an older man, found room in his life for love. But the story can only turn out the way things happened. I cannot conjure happy endings where none exist. I never missed my mother. I don't mean this to sound strong or uncaring. I just never knew what a mother was enough to miss one. And my father was such a warm and loving parent that I didn't feel a missing piece in my life. Any sorrow I felt was on my father's behalf, for I loved him so completely, and I knew that her death had been a great blow to him. So at night, in bed, listening to the whispering of the same warm sea water upon which I had come to be and my mother had come to pass, I would lay awake and wish that the tragedy could be undone. But it was never for my own sake. I only ever wanted my father to be happy. Here is what an orange smells like. At the base of the tree, it smells. Oh, here is what an orange tree smells like. At the base of the tree, it smells of soil, the churn of earth, and the sun that heats it up. If it is warm enough to grow oranges, then it is warm enough to bake the soil. And the scent will rise up, dense, gritty, pleasant without being beautiful. When rain comes, the smell changes, becoming sharper, a smell that is as squishy and thick as the mud that it makes. The tree itself smells like a house that will never be finished building. The dust of wood and all that binds wood together, it is a smell that grows with the tree, gaining the smells of what lives on and around it. The squirrel runs up the bark, and now the squirrel's nest, a faint trace of pungent animal mixes with the stolid smell of wood. Between continuous vegetable hum of the leaves, there are flowers that smell more like fruit than the fruit itself. A perfume that smells like a miracle, but also a reminder that life does not end with the humanity. The smell of the flower is extra human. It does not need us. It is the smell of running under a hot sun, the smell of falling into cool water. The flowers are the dream of the fruit and the dream of sweetness to come. And when the fruit themselves echoes of the flower's perfume, but more tangible. There is a weight to their smell, and when punched open with a thumb, the fizzy aroma of pulp and juice. That is what an orange tree smells like. Our estate had many orange trees and many other fruit trees besides. It was large, lush place on a hidden inlet protected from the damage of storms and the curiosity of passing ships. The Mediterranean was a dangerous and wild place at the time, full of warships on patrol, merchant ships passing to and from the ports of the East, pirate and bandit ships, and other ships with strange flags belonging to mysterious organizations whose membership and purpose were unclear, but whose menace was evident to all. Our tiny inlet was a blessing, allowing us a modicum of peace despite the apparent richness of our estate. And our estate was quite rich. The land had belonged to my mother's family, wealthy beneficiaries who luxuriated in fine arts and foods, the fawning attention that comes from kind donations to the poor, and a carefree life, not beholden to any business or industry. Wealth is either a blight upon the soul or a balm. My mother's family saw money as a privilege, allowing them to read poetry and explore intellectual gentility, which is why they approved of her marriage to my father, a working man with an average education. Few rich families of that time would have allowed their daughter to marry into a family without wealth for fear that a dowry would be taken and the young bride and her family ignored. As the son of a merchant, my father spent much of his youth traveling to farms to purchase livestock to purchase livestock and produce to then sell at larger markets in the city. He met my mother one summer while stocking figs in a market not far from the estate. A quick errand into town to buy food turned into a long afternoon of discussion about the sweetest figs in late June. You can tell the ripest by the smell, he told her, gently holding the green bulb to her nose as she inhaled the aromas of golden syrup and earth. The long afternoon turned to weeks of not so accidental meetings between the two that became a courtship. The family trusted him so thoroughly, and my mother loved him so fully, that no question of the integrity of their marriage ever arose. They were married on the grounds of this estate, which was then handed over to the new couple by my mom's parents. My father loved this home. Why would he not? He had developed a nose for the finest produce, and here he could savor every rich grape, every spring onion, every plump orange. Besides the citrus groves, there was a main house, a vast thing inhabited now by my father and me. There were servants' wings and towers that we left sealed to gather dust. Eventually we reduced our presence to one small wing of the house, sleeping in adjacent bedrooms, using what was once a small kitchenette for the stable workers as our place for both cooking and eating. My father carried the habits of a small merchant family he'd grown up in and didn't know what to do with luxury on the scale it was being offered. Still, the lands were maintained by a variety of servants who came regularly, and the area of our house that we lived in was also well kept. I did eventually begin to wonder, as the years went on, how my father was able to pay for the upkeep of such a large and lush estate when he did not seem to have any job in particular, having given up his merchant travels after I was born. This was all so long ago. To parse through my earliest years is difficult. I'm an old woman, perhaps the oldest there has ever been. A mind was never meant to catalog this much. Life was never meant to be this long, but I do retain some memories of my earliest and greatest period of joy when I lived in ignorance of what the world could do to a person. I am 3 years old. This is my earliest memory. I'm running through the orange groves. I'm chasing my father, or he is chasing me. It is a radiant and clear day. I decide to hide. I wiggle my way up one of the trees and I wedge myself against the trunk a few feet up into the leaves, and I see my father looking for me. "Where are you, daughter?" he says in exaggerated confusion. "Where is her beautiful face? I must see that face again. Where could it be?" And soon I allow myself to fall into the soft dirt where my father scoops me up and both of us are laughing. Was my face actually beautiful? My father would say so either way. After a moment, I don't know how old I am, probably 5 or so. We are in our little kitchen in our big house, and my father is cooking. I don't remember what he's cooking. I only remember the smell, which is meaty and green, the smell of vegetables cooking in fat. He asked me to cut the bread for our dinner, and he shows me how, supervising my use of the knife, but allowing me to do it myself. "There are only two of us, little one," he says. "Both of us need to be able to take care of the other." He shows me where I should cut, but it is I who carefully lowers the knife through the hard crust. The smells of onions and herbs and lamb fill this memory and anchors it forever in my mind. One more memory of my earliest years is not like the others. I'm 6 years old. Again, I'm in the orange groves, but this time on my own. My father is away for the afternoon on business, as happens every week or so, and I left to play around the estate. I knew every disused shed, every good swimming spot, and each climbable tree in the grove where I would hide and secretly watch the groundskeepers or the ships in the harbor or even the deer. I am playing in one of these hidden places and I see a shape moving forward in an odd stop and start way across the line of trees, and I assume it's one of the gardeners and called for them. No one answers. I'm scared, but determined to be able to tell my father how brave I had been, and so I run after the figure. Soon I reach the end of the line of trees and break out onto the broad grass leading down to the shore, and there by the shore is a man lurching in a strange, stiff manner. He does not turn to look back at me, only shambles to the edge of the rock, and then tips forward. Water is clear and shallow, but there is no sign of the man. I decide I must have been mistaken, and I do not tell anyone what I have seen. And that's the end of chapter 1.